Many diaspora Jews moved to Israel wishing to express their Jewish identities, but in Israel, their Jewishness is questioned for halachic reasons. Hillary Gordon's maternal grandmother converted through the Reform movement. She grew up as a conservative Jew and moved to Israel.
Ultimately, I went back to work for the place that had had the most impact on me as a conservative Jew and as a Jew in general, which was Camp Ramah. It was an intense and wonderful experience in feeling that I was helping to teach and helping to influence the younger generation of conservative Jews. When I moved in 2009 with my family to Israel, I found that Jewish educators weren't much in demand because, you know, there's plenty of Jewish educators running around Israel. So for a while I worked in the Hebrew University in different positions. I taught English, but I found that I was again attracted back to the movement, and I now work as the Resource Development Coordinator for Masorti Olami. When I made Aliyah to Israel, I had a fear that my grandmother's conversion would affect my Aliyah. And I really didn't want to have to provide any paperwork to prove my Jewishness. My Jewish identity isn't dependent upon someone else telling me that I'm Jewish. I don't need someone else to tell me that I'm Jewish. I just need to be able to celebrate and live Judaism the way that I interpret it.
Emily Bernstein grew up as a Jew. In Israel, her Judaism was questioned, so she chose to have an Orthodox conversion.
I converted on my sister's birthday, also the day before Shavuot, Ruth, the first convert. I am now Jewish, according to the state of Israel. I was born in upstate New York to a Jewish father and a mother who doesn't really define her religion, but grew up in an Irish Catholic home, going to church every Sunday, all dressed in white, going to confession. Maybe she never really connected to confession, but she went to confession, and a father who grew up in a modern Orthodox house in Teaneck, New Jersey, you know, the mecca of what we think of as modern Orthodox Judaism. So my father, before he even met my mother, helped found and establish the first synagogue in Woodstock, New York. And then my mother came along, the non-Jew, and they connected and they fell in love, and they both had a belief in God, and they both had a strong belief that values that were religion-based were incredibly important, and they agreed that that would be the backbone of what they gave their children growing up. So I grew up going to synagogue for high holiday services, going to Seder, and I actually remember at a young age going to a Hanukkah party and seeing all of the little kids who went to religious school at the synagogue that my father helped establish. And they came out and they were all in little handmade dreidel costumes, and they were spinning around. And I remember looking up at my parents and saying, I want to go to religious school, I want to be a spinning dreidel. But more than that, when we moved to Tampa, my father started working at a synagogue. And when he started working at the synagogue, they asked me, do you want to go to Sunday school? Do you want to go to religious school? It was a Reform synagogue. And I had the little spinning dreidels in the back of my head, and I thought, yes, I want to go to religious school. And my parents said, okay.
Jerusalem, if I forget you, let my right hand forget what it's supposed to do. Jerusalem, if I forget you, fire not gonna come from it. Jerusalem, if I forget you, let my right hand forget what it's supposed to do. Rebuild the
And from that moment on, I fell in love with Judaism. Judaism was a magnet. It was what motivated my life, my day-to-day. I ended up studying abroad in Israel on the Reform Movement Study Abroad program. And it was there that for the first time I realized this halachic problem of patrilineal and matrilineal descent exists. And it was the first time that I realized people wouldn't accept me as Jewish. And so after studying abroad, I decided I was making Aliyah. I knew that it would be an issue when I was applying through Nefesh B'Nefesh and the Jewish agency to make Aliyah. You have to meet with your shaliach in whatever state you live in. And I met with my shaliach, her name was Rosie. And Rosie said to me, "Are you going to convert when you get to Israel?" And I said to Rosie, "As soon as you can promise me that if I convert, they won't take it away from me, I will be happy to convert." For my identity, it was important. And yes, it was compounded by the fact that if I didn't do it, my kids wouldn't be Jewish. And then they would have to face all the problems that I had to face that were so hard in my life. And that community, connecting to what Jewish people have done for thousands of years, that's what brought me to this place. That's why I did it all.
Hillary and Emily, American Jews who made Aliyah, had to deal with the state of Israel doubting their Jewishness. Each made her choice. Should they have been questioned to begin with?
Ain't no one gonna break my stride. Ain't no one gonna hold me down. Oh no, I got to keep on moving, stay alive.